So today we're going to show you how we built this outdoor cabinet that is going to serve all of our outdoor storage needs. Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. If you have tuned in previously, then maybe you've seen some of our other outdoor videos where we've been tackling our back patio, and we're getting back to that this week, and we're building an outdoor storage cabinet to store all of the things, charcoal, outdoor games, lighters for the grill, all of the things that when company comes over, we try and like hide in the garage. We're gonna build that cabinet today. It's hot here in Oklahoma, so grab yourself some sweet tea, sit back, and enjoy this video.
So first up, I've got some cedar that I'm gonna mill up to size. We're gonna use those for the legs and the frame. I've just got that cedar on hand, so that's one of the reasons I'm using it. Also, because there'll be some blowing rain that'll come in on that porch, it'll probably help to have that extra protection for the legs. And so even though it is going to be made out of cedar, we're not actually gonna leave it natural. We are gonna paint it because Jessica said so. So we've got these legs milled up. Instead of using 4x4s for the legs, what we're doing is we've opted for some 2x4s, but it's gonna have a 4x4 look because we're gonna put them together like this so that from when you see the leg from the outside, it's gonna look chunky, but it's not gonna be an actual 4x4. So we're going to take and we will just connect this up, most likely with pocket screws. You could do this with dowels or whatever, but we're going to do that. And then also the other kicker is basically we want these two sides to be the same. So whatever this thickness is, which right now I think is about 4, we're going to want, when we put this side together, we're going to want this to come out at 4. And so what that does is because this is about 1.5 inches thick, we're gonna have to cut this one. We're gonna have to rip this guy down to about 2.5 to make it the exact same on both sides so it looks uniform. Turns out that this piece that I cut here is so narrow, you know, it's the narrower side of the two on the legs. It's so narrow that when you put it in place here and you drill this out with Craig jig, it's going to actually drill out part of the edge of this board. I can't have that because that's going to be exposed. So I could take the time and dowel it, but I really kind of don't want to because of what it is. I'm not too terribly worried about it. I'm going to countersink this and then put a screw into it this direction. I'll glue it and screw it this direction. Then I'll put a wood plug over it. Then I'll sand it down flush and then I'll paint it. And I think it'll be fine. No, I'm not crazy. If you have a problem with the glue causing your pieces to slide around when you try to clamp them up and put them together, a little bit of table salt will help to kind of give it just enough grit to kind of hold it together, and it helps a little bit, and it doesn't do anything to the glue, it just dissolves and it's fine. Anyway, that's a little tip there. So we've got the legs, they're glued up and ready to go now. We let them set overnight, and now we're going to begin the process of attaching 2x2s that are going to stretch between the legs on each side and get that all put together. And we're just going to see how far we can get tonight. We do a lot of our stuff in the evenings after work and on the weekends, and so this is a weekday. So we're going to get what we can done tonight, and then we're just going to keep working on it throughout the week. We're going to be attaching these stretchers. I don't know for sure if that's the actual name of them, but that's what we're going to call them. Basically, they're just going to stretch between these two pieces here, and then they're also going to act as the face frame kind of when we get done, the thing that our doors are going to close up against. But we're just attaching these. We're going to run some pocket screws, a pocket screw at each end. We're going to glue it up, and then we're just going to screw it in together that way. These stretchers on the bottom, I've brought them up about 3 inches. Just so that it's not resting completely on the ground, and the feet will actually kind of hold it up off of the floor. And then also too, another thing that I was going to mention, when you use pocket screws, I've found that if you run an impact on pocket screws, especially on a softer type wood, you tend to run the risk of stripping out when you're driving that screw in. So I've turned to, most of the time, I've got a 12 volt drill that I use most of the time, and I just set the clutch to just kind of find a good point that prevents me from stripping out the screw, but it still sucks it in and kind of stops it on its own. So next up, we're gonna put a couple of panels in the ends of this cabinet. We want it to have a shaker style look, and so one way we can do that, we're gonna mount this panel on the inside. That will kind of help it to have that look. The doors are gonna have that look as well. But I'm gonna do something that may be a little strange for an outdoor cabinet. I'm going to use MDF as the panels here. It's all going to be painted and primed. For one, I'm curious to see like how well it actually holds up. Two, it's what I had on hand. So the shelf there, it fit, and we've got the end caps put in, and we're going to have 3 doors is what we're thinking, with maybe an offset divider on one of them. So my plan is I'm going to countersink through the bottom shelf, and that will hold that divider, and then I'll pocket screw the top of that divider to the 2 aprons of the cabinet. Well, that worked well. Normally I would pocket screw this, but I don't want the pocket holes to show from the inside of the cabinet, so I'm going up through the bottom. Another thing that I could do if I wanted to, I could dado this out, but again, it's an outdoor cabinet. I'm not too crazy worried about like having fancy joinery on this, so if I was doing this in a kitchen or something like that, it would probably be a little different. On this top divider, I'm going to pocket screw into the aprons of this cabinet. So I forgot to add those pocket screws instead of getting my big jig out. This is just, I can't remember if they call this like a mini or a something, but basically you can just use it in an application like this, where you just need to stick one in there. You do that and then clamp it down, and then we'll drill it out.
We're just about to the point where we can sand and paint, but before we get to that, we are going to add a shelf here. This is the back side of the cabinet, but we're going to add a shelf for our super long cutting board that we use. There's no place to store it in the house, so this is going to be the perfect solution for that. We were going to do drawers, but really we just wanted this space down here to really house all the junk on the back patio. So Jeremy is adding shelf pins with the Craig Jig shelf pin jig. So yeah, we're almost done.
So the next thing we've got left to do is we've got to build the doors for the cabinet, and we're just going to use some 3/4 inch material with a 1/2 inch MDF panel for those doors. And if you're not familiar with how to build doors, I've got a video that I'll link up where I show kind of how to do that and kind of the process. This is going to be a little bit of a quick and dirty process in this video because you're just going to catch some of the highlights. I do talk about it a little more in that video there. to find that Jessica has started painting the cabinet. So that was wonderful. She now has that completely finished and has started painting and priming the doors for the cabinet. So the next step, and I believe this is the final step, is going to be the top. So we've gone back and forth trying to figure out what we want to do with this top, because we're actually going to paint the top white just like the rest of the cabinet. I wanted to go with a natural wood, but Jessica thinks it's going to fight too much with some other natural wood that we've got going on out on that back porch. So, because she's my wife, she wins. But here's what we're going to do. So we've gone back and forth. We considered taking something like, say, some Baltic birch plywood. We considered taking something like that and laminating it up. So basically taking 2 3/4 inch pieces and put them together to make one big thicker piece, because we ultimately want it to look kind of like a bar top. I mean, we want to kind of have a thicker top on it. We considered doing that with the plywood and then putting edge banding or something like that on it and then painting it. I have Baltic birch 3/4 inch plywood, but I couldn't hardly bring myself to do that with it. So we kind of ruled that out. The next thing we considered was to do like 2x6s out of like construction pine, stuff like that. I've done that before. It is really difficult to get decent lumber. A lot of times you end up having to kind of go through and plane and almost kind of joint those boards and stuff to just try to get good flat boards. And even then, especially where this is going to be outside, we didn't know for sure if we wanted to do that because we're afraid with extreme heat, extreme cold. Those boards are already kind of susceptible because they're not really taken out of the best trees. So our third idea that we had was, what if we took a project panel from Lowe's and we used that as our top? Now again, we want this to be a thicker top, so we can't just use one, so that means we're going to have to laminate 2 of them together. And so that's what we've purchased here. If you're not familiar with these, basically they are like 1x2s and 1x3s that are edge glues together to make a wider board. And in this case, this actually was 24 inches, which is exactly what we needed. Now, the thing about this is, could we do this ourselves? Yes. Do I really want to for a project like this that's just going to be outside? No. Sometimes it's worth the money to just take something like this, to spend the money, it's already been done, and just get that out of your hair and move on. Because if I made a list of all the crap that needs to be done on this house, I would have to have 2 notebooks. So I need to get this done so that I can move on to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So the next step, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna grab some glue, and we're gonna smear a whole ton of glue on this thing, and we're gonna clamp them up, and we'll see what happens. So the bar top is done. We pulled the clamps loose and everything stayed together. So we cut her to length, ran it on the table saw and just skimmed both edges just to clean both edges up a little bit. And when I did that, I used an old blade just because I didn't really figure the glue was probably good on that good CMT blade. So I used one that I wasn't worried about. So next we're gonna start, we'll sand this down and then put some primer on it. And we're gonna paint it and get it installed, and I think we'll be ready to go. Installing these handles on these cabinet doors can be a little tricky. What I did was, I just did my measurements and I made basically a quick little makeshift jig, out of some plywoods, all this is. So here's my holes where they need to line up. And then this just hangs over the door like so. And then I put another piece on the other side of the door. And then I just take a spring clamp, and this spring clamp holds that piece on. That other piece that's on the other side of the door, its main job is mainly just to keep when I drill this through, it will have a tendency to try to splinter out and blow out. That other piece on there helps to prevent that from happening. We attach the top with these little figure 8 tabletop fasteners. Basically, the way that these work is you countersink with a Forstner bit the actual frame side of the table, and then run a screw into it and attach it. And then from the underside up into the top, you run another screw, and that's what holds it in place, and it works really well.
All right, so as you guys can see, it turned out beautifully. Maybe a little bit bougie for an outdoor cabinet, but you know what? That's all we know how to do around here. So not only is it beautiful, but it's super functional. This side over here is gonna house the trash can, and then over here we've got the charcoal storage as well as outdoor games. Now, if you didn't need all of this storage down here, you could do like some drawers in there, and that would be really nice. So if this was helpful, if you have any questions, be sure and put them in the comments. Otherwise, be sure and like and subscribe.